stop talking. No, you got to start humming.
No, I've muted my...
What? Well, then we don't have any audio then. We've got no music. People are going to wonder what's going on. They need to hear something. This is the BBC. No, can't say that. Get in trouble.
I thought you were joking, but I just checked my audio, and we are...
Yes, we are streaming. So is it going to Twitch?
Yeah, it's going to Twitch.
Okay, because it still says here it's sending data.
No, we're live. It's fine.
We've got 12 people on YouTube. Hello, 12 people on YouTube. If you're wondering what on earth is going on, well, so are we. So you're not alone. 21 people now. Good grief. Good grief. Welcome to the stream. We're just waiting for everyone to jump in. There should be music here, but Kaora refuses to hum.
Oh, sorry. I can sing if you want.
No, hum.
Okay.
And that was Kaora's rendition of Hum, brought to you by Kaora.
Thank you.
Yes. So there we are. We're just waiting for people to jump in. I mean, do we have to wait for 5 minutes? Do we really have to wait for 5 minutes? And that's what they recommend.
7 o'clock. We should go now.
We should just go now, but we've only been streaming for like 2 minutes. All the messages...
That's because you were late.
I wasn't late-ish. Ish. So I don't know. I'm not getting any feedback from Twitch. I don't think anyone's watching on Twitch.
There's 2 people on Twitch.
There's 2 people on Twitch. Okay, well, the chat's not telling me why. So let me jump into the chat and see what's going on with the chat, and then we'll start.
I can see the chat on Twitch. You don't need to.
No, I know you can, but I want to see the chat everywhere.
Oh,
so we have Zarigo saying greetings on Twitch. See, I can see your Twitch. Stephen Prather, start when you want. Well, there we go. Pals85 says, hello from Italy. At the moment, I'm still alive. Hello, Italy. Please stay where you are. No, it's actually awfully horrid, isn't it? It's not a fun thing altogether. Army Aircat 2 says hello. Hello, Army Aircat 2. Let's bring up the video. I mean, at least I can see something, and then at least I know that we're both here. Hello, everybody. Salutations, and Adrian 1976 stuck at work, but you're lurking and here to support. Thank you so very much. It's always good to have you in our streams, and yes, they will be saved. Now, if you're wondering what's going on, Kaora and I have come to... I'm going to stop talking now because I realised I'm doing all the talking. It's your turn.
Yeah, I know. It's just like,
Well, you have to interject. Otherwise, I will just talk. Everyone knows.
Hi, everyone. Kaora here. I'm with Guy. We're going to do some stuff today. Carry on, Guy.
That was it. I gave you the platform.
Look, we don't have a lot of planning for this stream, apart from... chatting about things and possibly world building, map making at the same time.
We're going to show you some cool stuff and talk about stuff and hang out and just chill. It's a Saturday morning for some of you, evening for some of us. Don't think anyone's watching from Australia or from Japan. I see we've got some people from Gatorland. Gatorland. I assume that's the bayous, the Louisiana. Is that Gatorland? I would think of that as Gatorland.
Florida.
We got some people from Germany. We got some from Croatia. Some people from Edgewise. If you're near the edge, that will make some people happy. Anyway, so yeah, we're on Canada, Ontario. There we are. Good afternoon from Ontario. Is it afternoon already in Ontario? Yes, it would be, wouldn't it? So there you are. Right. Eric says, and this is just Eric being Eric, how to be a great game master. Guy, Kaora looks like your fancy lad little brother. Yeah, well, he's much better groomed than I am. I mean,
well. Fancy lad. Yes.
You're a fancy lad there. We got someone from Pyongyang. That's wonderful. People from all over the world. People from Sweden. My favorite part. North Carolina, Michigan.
Wow.
I assume that's Michigan. So Iowa. Wow, lovely. Okay, so we've got people from everywhere. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, as Kaora alluded to, what we did was we said, well, we really enjoy hanging out, just the two of us, talking about role-playing stuff. Really just everything, to do with role playing.
Yeah, it's not limited to that, but it gets off tangent very quickly.
Yeah, we will try and keep it to just role playing. We're gonna answer some questions about world building specifically, because Great GM live show will still be happening tomorrow.
Yes.
Kara will still be doing his regular live streams. This is not like it's replacing everything. This is just, let's see what happens. Let's see if you guys like it. Let's see if we like it. I mean, that's also something to bear in mind. And we were sort of throwing out ideas, saying, well, what can we do? What can we, we kind of get together, and it's like, well, jelly wrestling, but that's a different type of stream, and well,
not really for Twitch either. Some other streaming sites perhaps, but not Twitch. So we need to do that another time.
Yeah, kind of hold back. So
hold that stuff back for now.
Yeah. We're like, well, Kara draws some absolutely spectacularly beautiful maps, and I can talk nonsense forever. So why do we put the two things together? Let's draw some maps and talk some nonsense whilst we're drawing some maps. Or at least while Kara's drawing maps, I'll be just talking nonsense. Yeah. And we'll take it from there. We'll interact with you guys and just keep you entertained for the next sort of however long this takes, because we never agreed on that before we started the stream. So,
it'll be done when it's done.
It'll be done.
72-hour stream.
Yeah, there we are. So, yes, for those of you that might be a little bit confused, we have also split the stream. So, if you're watching on Twitch, you're watching on Kara's Twitch channel. If you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on my channel, How to Be a Great GM. And if you don't watch the other, well, now's a perfectly good opportunity to explore and discover a new channel that you can participate in. So there you go. Right, so we're going to show you what we kind of have in mind in terms of you being able to see what's going on. It's not just going to be these two panels, because that would be awfully boring. So do you want to switch? Now, we haven't got this down yet. So
3, 2, 1, go!
Switch. Close. It was just a little bit of lag. So we've got to change up how we're talking to each other. But anyway, so there you go. Now you've got that. So, well, hello world. Yes, there we go. That's the name of the show at the moment. It's like, hello world. What are we doing? So there we are. So we shall see. People are saying it's absolutely fantastic that you got to partner up with Kaora. You can completely and utterly improve your ability based on his amazing talents. So yes, absolutely, ride the coattails. So there we are. Torben BK says, will you soon make videos about how to use this for world maps as in Deos? And hello from Denmark. Well, both of us are involved in Project Deos, absolutely. This is not affiliated with Project Deos at the moment. I don't even think that they know that we're doing this stream. But yes, certainly what we talk about here could very possibly be applied to Deos or any other map-making tool that you might want to use, even if you want to draw it by hand. I mean, that's such a crazy idea these days with all the digital stuff. So there we are. Right, so there's the map. Kara drew it. I thought it was quite pretty. It's called Mountain and Tree.
Oh, yes, Mountain and Tree. Sorry, I'm trying to fix my pixelation on the stream. It's because...
No, it's because I'm taking a very little preview window from Zoom and I'm zooming it up. Or is it... Just you are pixelated, right?
Just me, yeah. You're fine. I think it's because I can't make my view bigger because I'm sharing my screen.
You should be that big in the screen, but I sort of dragged you. I made you a little bit bigger because otherwise it's really, really weird. It's like
yeah. You're just gonna have to deal with me being all pixel. Okay, no numbing, more map making. Now Kaora is real life size. Yes, Laura has met me. I am tiny.
No! What? Okay, I'm going to make you back. There we go. All right, so yes. Well, the focus is not on you when we're on the screen.
You don't need to watch me.
The focus is on the map that hopefully you're going to start drawing soon. So yes, but before we start that, while you clean that up, let's switch back. Oh, I forgot to say switch back. Oh.
What? Why are we switching back?
Because we don't want to watch you erasing stuff. That's private.
No, put it back.
All right, fine. Okay. Well, I don't know. All right. Well, there we go. Okay. All right. As you can see, this is really well rehearsed, complete top-notch production.
Yeah.
So there's some questions coming through, which Let's see. Oh yes, if this is your first time to the stream, wouldn't you please, because I'm very, very old, wouldn't you please put the giant word question in caps lock in front of your actual question? It just pops out from the rest of the chat. Oz Allen asks, or Oz Allen, I suppose, how do you include lore into a multi-region area? I tend to not get to see my lore pop up in my sessions. That's a great, 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 great question. And Big Mountain? The lore is that this map was made by a goblin, Big Mountain. You're actually... Yeah. Okay. I promise you, it's not going to be much of that. I can't promise you anything. Okay. So it's a good question. How do you put lore into your maps? And I think there are a couple options that we can go with to answer that one.
To be fair, that's exactly what this stream is going to be about. We're going to be making a map, and we are going to be populating it with lore.
Yes. Correct. And then how does that lore come across? Well, that's the interesting question, and that's kind of linking how you play your map and how you also position it. So I think that's also something that's very, very exciting, and that's what we can do here. Is now we're part of Dungeon Fog, we're part of Project Deos, so there is a bias from both of us in terms of that software, and absolutely that's definitely what's going to be happening. Now, putting that aside for a moment. The benefit that you have when you're drawing your own maps is that you can create custom and unique artwork that is almost a visual representation of your lore in its own way. So yes. we're gonna get there. We're gonna come back to that. So it's a good question. Ask it again a little bit later on once we've actually got something to work with, I should say. So those are Project Deos assets as you can see them there.
Yeah, so the thing with Project Deos assets is these are going to be amazing for you creating your own maps because you'll be able to mix and match them, create your own biomes and all the rest of it. But one of the things about drawing your own maps that's really cool is that, say, for example, you are designing a fortress and you want the spires of the fortress to be pointy and not round. If you're drawing your own map, that's not a problem. You can change these things to fit your setting or fit what you have in mind or what the vision is in your head. And so you're not limited by the assets themselves. Absolutely.
You know what,
this is designed for people with zero artistic talent and they just want to place things down and create maps. But if you're designing your own map and you're drawing from scratch, you can change things. So that's...
Absolutely. Do you want to bring up the Avernus map?
Oh, yes, I could do.
Now, there's lots of questions coming through, so I'm going to go scrolling through to find these questions later on. Now, the reason why I say bring up the Avernus map is because Avernus, I think, is a very good example of exactly what you're asking about, Oz, in terms of lore and maps, because the Avernus map, Kara played in the game as a player. I was obviously running the game. Now, there had already been a map created for Avernus by Wizards of the Coast, and it's perfectly serviceable, but it didn't contain a huge amount of visual lore in terms of reading that map. So I then went back and said, no, hang on, let's try this again. Designed this map very badly. I didn't even have the sketch of it anymore, and sent it to Cairo, who then interpreted it and made it beautiful. I mean, that's absolutely beautiful. But let's go to that black and white map. The version
I was just trying to see if I have the...
oh, look at that purple one. That purple one's stunning.
The sketch that you sent me. But
oh, dear God, no, please.
I don't have it anymore.
No, don't. Although it does show off your skill and ability at interpreting a disaster. An absolute disaster.
It was pretty... Yeah,
it was very bad. Yeah. And it was sort of like circles. Like, over here I wanted this, and over there I wanted that. So when that black and white one, I think, was the clearest one to look at. So what we did was we said, okay, cool. Well, we want the floating city with chains. Now that comes directly out of the Avernus book. So that is definitely a city that's already there, and they've got the floating chains. So Cairo was able to draw that. But right next to it, that sort of scaly area, is the salt plains. And I didn't say how Cairo should draw the salt plains. I said it's salt plains. Make it whitish so that it looks like it's salt plains. Right next to the white boneyard. And oh yes, there's a citadel that's there's a little structure inside of it. So this is where when you're designing stuff, you build the lore into the map. It'll remind you, like that skull volcano over there, and you know it works really well. Okay, but before we kind of go too much further into that side of things, let's start drawing a map, shall we?
Sure. Yeah. Let's start drawing a map.
So we thought long and hard about what sort of map should we create.
No, we didn't.
Debated.
We spent barely any time on it, and we figured that this was the best thing we could come up with in short time.
Kaora hasn't yet learned the art of lying to impress. This is...
I'm sorry. I meant, yes, we spent many hours.
Days.
Just going backwards and forwards with ideas. We had a mood board where we collected our ideas. We were very thorough.
You see, when you then lie, it's also got to be... I have a whole video on how to lie properly. Maybe... Anyway, ultimately we said, well, we weren't exactly sure what we were going to be doing. We weren't exactly sure if anyone was going to show up for the stream or stay around for the stream, for that matter. So we said, okay, well, we'll just talk about it and we'll just come up with something. There's a question that's been asked, which I think is going to help us with this, though, Kara.
Mm-hmm.
And that question was, what is the program that we're using at the moment to make the map?
Oh, Photoshop. We are using Photoshop.
Yes, we're using Photoshop and Kaora. Kaora is really the asset generator thing.
Yes.
And then Photoshop is the program that we're using. Now, why are we doing that versus, say, using some other software that's out there? And the question is because we can then do almost anything.
Mm-hmm. We're not limited in any way.
Yeah, so it's not...
Using WonderDraft or Procreate or... Is it Procreate? No.
Incarnate.
Any of those kind of map-making programs, they're cool and they're good, but they are limited by the assets that they have. Whereas in Photoshop, I can draw them by hand and we can come up with anything.
I think people might be hearing an echo because I'm supposed to be wearing headphones. But anyway.
Oh.
So, yes, absolutely. So we're going to draw anything. Do you think, Kaora, that we should perhaps take suggestions?
We could do. I normally do on my streams.
Right.
One of the things that we could do is we could set out one of the major themes, because when we and Guy were talking about this, we were talking, well, how do we start the map? We know we want to draw. We want to have a couple of things going on. So we definitely want to have a region. So the first thing that we sort of decided on was that this isn't going to be a world map to start with. This is going to be a region. So that's the most important thing for anybody watching to know right off the bat, is this is to a certain degree relatively small for a map. Then after that, we kind of broke down and we don't really know what we were doing. We sort of thought maybe something to do with a volcano, but we don't really have a clear idea. So maybe we could take suggestions on the kind of area and the kind of region that we're working on and go from there.
Love it. All right, so there are 95 people currently watching the stream. One of them has excused themselves because we know that they are busy. Everybody else, give us a region that you'd like us to explore. It doesn't mean we're going to be confined to that. And it doesn't mean that will be the only thing in that region.
Yeah. We can combine stuff together, and we can also take some concepts, and we can also take some biomes and environments. So if you really want to see a volcano region, for example, that was our original idea, was like a volcano region, then let us know and we'll add that in somewhere. But also if we want something a bit weirder and a bit more crazy.
A shrubbery!
The knights who say nee, nee. We can do that as well, because again, we're not limited by any kind of asset restriction. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot of things coming through. We have Underdark. Volcano with magma rivers and glassified fields. You score 10 points. Coastal cliffs, tundra, mystic fjords, an estuary town famed for its naval shipyards.
Too fast.
Desert, coastline looking like a dragon skull, underworld, not a volcano but a lake or caldera filled, a secret haunted garden, volcano with hot swamps, so like sexy, well-endowed swamps, concrete jungle, burnt forest valley, a fallen war machine of an ancient race, a swamp full of magic lizard people, Great Plains, a volcanic archipelago.
See, this is one of the problems with this is my spelling is going to break down very quickly.
We're not here to teach you spelling. We're not
fantastic, because I'm not very good at that.
Canyon, goblin swamp, volcano below a lake. So just sort of like a damp, hot bit of volcano. Feywild, ocean, more swamps, an endowed swamp. Wait, what? Mountaintop city or a river delta, a jungle, a ginormous quarry.
Okay, look, wait.
Okay, that's quite the list.
Wait. Too much.
All right, so hang on a moment. All right, so that's lovely. Let's put those in. Let's do that, your list.
All of this?
Yes.
Okay.
In a single location.
In a single location.
Yes.
Right. Now, so that's a bunch of ideas. I don't know if we'll get all of those in there, but
we can
good.
Try.
Yeah, we'll try. Look, that's fine. Now,
so thank you for that.
If we're going to fit all of this in a region, how big is the region going to be, Guy? Because we were talking about scale, and I've got this in here because this is going to be our scale. This is going to be how big a mountain is. This is going to be how big a tree is. So we kind of know at this point, based on how big the canvas is and how big these assets that I took from Deos, how big everything else on the map is going to be.
Okay.
But we can decide whether or not this is going to be like a mile or 2 miles or whatever. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So what do you think it should be? What are you feeling?
When I draw maps, I don't really care about the scale of the individual items.
Yes.
I more kind of go, well, this is 50 miles in either direction, so it's usually 100 miles square. Because that's a full day's travel from midpoint out. And usually you can prevent the players from moving forward in that time. You know, if they hire horses and they ride hard for a day, they'll get to 50 miles and then they have to stop for the night.
So one of the things we can do is we can add a hex grid over the top, and we can change the scale so that we can change how many hexes we have here and mess around with that if you like. So we can have loads of little
how many hexes does one need to make 100 mile? 100 hexes? That's crazy.
Well,
maybe 100 miles is too big.
100 miles would need to... So each hex is a mile.
And then we'd need 100 miles. Or is my maths bad? If each hex is a mile... Okay. Okay, well, Kayla figures that one out. I'm going to go and answer some
questions. This breaks the Photoshop.
It breaks the Photoshop.
Nope, we're not doing that one.
Maybe 100. Maybe each square should be 10 miles.
Now we can do it like that.
Okay, all right. Well, you're in charge here. 1 hex per inch, says Sky Whitaker. That it is
that's
what it
probably
is.
About 100. That's probably more than 100. I don't know how to count these. Right. Okay. So somebody on stream
1 folled by 2, then 3.
This is at 15. Okay.
All right.
So
that looks fine.
people on chat. We'll let people on chat count the hexes.
I'll give 1,000 experience points to whoever counts those hexes. Okay, so there's lots of suggestions going through, and if your question does not get answered, please ask it again, because
we'll miss it.
The chat. Yeah. I've got chat coming from both Twitch and from YouTube, so my chat is sort of moving quite quickly, and so that's where we're going. I do see here there's a question from Lawrence Carnavan. Canavan, and Laura Bones. She asked it as well earlier on. She's using foul language in chat, Laura Bones. Take you back around the house and wash your mouth out with soap, young lady. Anyway, I've completely forgotten the question. Oh, yes, the question. Yeah. Yes. How much should you account for real-world geography in your maps?
So that's an interesting question, but honestly, it's one of the things that I tend to shy away from a lot. But that's because I've now spent a long time, a few years or more, making maps. So I have a basic understanding of geography. And if you have a basic understanding of geography, you're fine. You don't need to pay attention to it on a map-by-map basis and really sort of make sure, oh, yes, these mountains are in the right position. All the rivers are correct to the real life way that they work. Because often you can get away with doing things just so that they look good or that they fit within for a story or an idea that you have. So yeah, don't worry about it too much, but a basic understanding will usually get you by pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I as I said, I look at it and I go, that's 100 miles across, and to draw the mountains that you can actually see the mountain on the map. Okay, that individual mountain is not that big. That mountain range covers that area, and there will be mountains of different sizes within that. So I kind of avoid that. I laugh though because we were having a discussion with Janet from World Anvil the other day, and she was talking about, we've got to build geographically correct maps. And both Kaora and I jumped up and down and went, it's a world that has magic in it. If it's got magic in it, it means the fish have got magic in them. They make the water go backwards. I don't know. Anyway, that was one of our ideas, actually, was to draw a map that was completely and utterly geographically absurd, and then send it to wonderful people and say, what do you think of my map? The trouble
is that a lot of people feel like accurate, realistic maps are the way to go, because then you can build a lot more realistic worlds around them. So you can play around a lot more with cultures, and you can do a lot with your world building and really get into the gritty little details. But that is a symptom of world builders' disease, where you are so obsessed with detail that you lose sight of a larger picture, or you're not focusing on what you should be in terms of what purpose is the map for, or what the world is for. So I tend to look at it all the time and say, you know what, I don't need to worry about this, because this isn't going to be relevant. This isn't necessary for this kind of map. It's not that kind of thing. And all of the maps I draw are representational anyway. So they're not supposed to be accurate. They're supposed to be a representation of the area. And to me, that's totally fine. I don't need to worry at all about, making sure my map is 100% realistic. It has to be kind of cool. There could be some nice little geographic sort of things in there. But generally speaking, I just make it up and make it look cool.
Yeah. And does it inspire you to tell better stories? That's my thinking. All right. So choose a geography, because we're half an hour into this show on how to draw a map.
We haven't really drawn a map.
We've kind of not done so much of that yet.
Let's have a little think. So we're going to have all of these regions in here. We're going to have some volcanoes. We're going to have the Underdark somehow. Yeah. We're going to have tundra deserts, hot swamps, and fallen war machines, canyons, goblin swamps, the Feywild, and mountaintop cities. Yeah. Now, this is 100 miles.
Yeah.
Possibly wouldn't find tundra and deserts within 100 miles of one another, but maybe.
It depends on your definition, because the Gobi Desert
is very cold, yes.
And the Atacama Desert is right next to snowy mountains.
They are dry, so
they are dry deserts.
That does work. I have a question for you, Guy, as I'm sitting here.
Oh dear. Okay.
Looking at this map.
Not drawing anything. Yeah.
Not drawing anything. Yep.
Eric says there's 77 hexes, by the way, but there's only one slight problem. What? I can't prove him wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I'm not going to count those.
Somebody
hexes.
else could say there's 89, and we'd be like, all right.
Yeah. It's like, welcome to the stream where we count hexes. That's all we do.
So it's 77 miles. That's fine. That's enough.
That's more than enough.
The question I have for you, Guy, is what kind of shape do you think of when you're imagining a region map? Because right now, we've got a blank space.
Yes.
Now, we could fill it all up. We could just go, right, the whole thing is land. And we could be all green, and then we could put some biomes up here and some mountains down here. But typically, I like to
Yes.
figure out where a coastline is of some kind.
Oh, you want a coastline? Okay.
I want a coastline.
There's a wonderful question that's come through, and Laura's being naughty. I'm just going to ignore her for now. We love having you in the stream, Laura. We really do. There's a question here. Cryptic Critic says, will these tips be helpful to me if I've already made my continent map, or am I out of luck? I think that you'll be able to use these, because if you made a continent map, your players aren't, yes, they're going to look at the continent map, they're going to go, oh, there's that, there's that, there's that, there's that. But your players aren't going to be moving around on that scale map. They're going to be moving around these kind of maps. So this will definitely help you there. I mean, there's
you want to make a smaller map if you have a big world or continent-sized map, because you want something that you can see where towns are apart from one another, or villages, and where a village is in relation to a dungeon and things like that. You don't really see that on world and continent maps.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another question came through, and I actually cannot see it now. Someone was asking, do you use, when you are... oh, here we go. Handsome Aaron says, the stream seems to imply that you create the physical geography before creating the civilizations that will live there, and what you'll use it for in the campaign. Is this true of your usual process? It actually is not for me. It's definitely not for me. I have a very different process.
It is for me, but only to a certain extent. I usually come up with a large-scale idea, and then I will create a map, and then I will put things down in more detail. So I will make the decisions about, oh, I had an idea for a kingdom, but now I can put it on the map, and now I can work out where it is. And by putting it on the map, I might think that, oh, actually, this is closer to this other thing that I had thought up. And so it creates a different dynamic than I thought it would. So it's a bit more of a dynamic process for me. Usually it's just the big stuff that I've just had an idea. Then I'll create the map, and then I'll do work on it from there. Today, we're just going to make it up as we go along, as we're drawing and world building at the same time. So, yeah, we don't really have a larger idea, do we, Guy?
No, we don't. When I create maps, I like this blank canvas, for example. Usually I will say, okay, well, I want this map. So I'm busy developing a campaign at the moment, actually. And I want this map to have two major factions at war with one another. And then I need spaces that my players can escape into and move about and have sort of safe zones and the like. So in this case, we don't have a narrative. We don't have a story yet. That was sort of one of the things that we're going to develop whilst Kara is busy doing that. So you said you wanted a coastline. Yes. Can I suggest draw a coastline for us instead of the inverse of the Grinch's hand? I'm mesmerized now. What the hell are you doing? Is this how you do your coastlines?
I do, yes.
You don't do a black line first and then come in later?
No.
That's weird. You can tell I've not watched many of your starting streams, eh? All right, so he's going to create a coastline for us, because coastline's always fun. We can do some interesting things. Someone suggested a coastline in the shape of a giant turtle's head. That was Gredren Firestrom said, let's put in oh, we got a coastline on either side.
Yeah.
Are we on an isthmus? I hate that word. Isthmus.
Possibly, yes. It
okay.
Might be a lower bit.
Yeah. All right. So this is a possible join between two major landmasses, which implies a whole bunch of things. Now, just from a population perspective, when you have a point of contact between two major spaces, that's usually hotly contested, or it's controlled by a single sort of space. It always seems to happen. Or at least the hospitable part is. So if you look at the Bering Straits, for example, between Alaska and Russia, it's not hotly contested. No one really wants it, and no one's likely to invade from either of those 2 points either, because it's so bloody cold and miserable.
Yeah.
Mexico is a good example, where if it wasn't for the inhospitability of the Mexican deserts, that would be a very big contention if South America ever clubbed together and decided to invade North America. I mean, that's why you build walls and things. So if that were to happen, then that would be the point of contact. So it's also useful to look at that. So, I mean, how did you draw that coastline? You just sort of wiggled.
Yes, I wiggled. Wiggling is amazing when you're drawing a coastline. And for the most part, you just want to be sort of, the more wiggly you go, the more natural it looks. But you have to make sure that you're nice and varied with your wiggles.
Aha.
So
Now, we were talking
sometimes
about
you
that
want a
the other day.
nice wiggly coastline, and sometimes you want some nice sort of flatter bits down here, for example. And then it gets a little bit more wiggly. Now,
Yeah.
the question is, are you happy with all these wiggles? Does anything jump out at you? Do you want this part down here to be bigger? Do you want this part down here to be bigger?
I want it to be narrow. Well, I want the ocean to be bigger and the land to be narrower.
So this bit here narrower.
Yeah, so then we've got a really contested point. I mean, that does create some interesting things. So, yes, someone suggested, Draconic Rift suggested, that perhaps we could do multiple layers, because we're using Photoshop, to do the Underdark and volcanic regions and the like. And that's actually a question that I've always had, is we've got this wonderful place called the Underdark. And the idea of a volcano is a giant chamber of lava, or magma at that point, because it's technically underground, that then has a chimney, it's called, that runs up to the surface.
Okay.
And then it becomes a volcano on the top.
Sure.
What would the drow do? Would they just have like these caverns, and you'd be sort of going along one day and you I mean, forget the point that it gets really hot underground and that oxygen flow is almost non-existent. When I mean, I come from a country
You've got to
where
but you've got to kind of say that the Underdark wouldn't be possible in the real world, because it would be in magma, would it?
Well,
so,
yes.
You know, a fantasy world would have to have some other kind of processes, or some kind of perhaps plant life underground, mushrooms or something that creates an airflow, or some kind of oxygen that enables everything to live and survive.
So our planet generates a magnetic field because of this massive amount of molten metal moving around, spinning around, and creating all these wonderful things. We know that magic exists in most fantasy worlds, so perhaps there's a magnetic thing that's happening as well, and that would allow for the Underdark to exist and not be on average 50 to 60 degrees Celsius, because that's how hot it could get down there. And that's only 3 kilometers below the surface, which is 4 miles.
I do love the idea, though, of there being say that we're drawing here, and you say, well, actually, around about here, there's going to be a big volcano, and I draw a volcano here and all the rest of it. But then we actually we do a different map, and we actually do an Underdark map below
That correlates.
Yes, so it's like a cavern.
Well, that's great. I mean, the stream has now just become a 12-hour stream. It's fine. I mean, whatever.
Well, 12 hours is nothing.
Yeah, draw quickly.
Yeah. How about this coastline then? What do you think about?
I like that coastline. Although the part that you chopped out doesn't seem as wiggly as the part that you drew by hand.
Yes, don't worry. We're going to fix all of the coastline and make it all nice.
All right, no more panicking from my
No.
side. Right.
What about the overall shape? Are you happy with the shape?
The shape is the shape. It's interesting. It gives us a point of contestation. Okay, so if we sort of vaguely look at this, I wish I could stand in front of this map and sort of talk about the weather, but
take a step back, have a good look at it.
Yeah, well, that's important. That really is important.
It is. It's very important, because we can't really change the overall shape after we're.
No, once you're committed, you're committed. So, all right. So that sea, which is stretching in from the west to the east. Yes, that lovely stretch there.
Yes.
That's brilliant. That's lovely. We'll develop that a little bit further, because that's going to create a wonderful trading spot or defensible spot. Then you see that sort of finger of God sticking down into it at the mouth.
This here?
No, further to the left, to the west.
This here?
There, that thing. That is going to definitely be a major point of conflict, because it controls access to that harbour.
Yes.
If each hex is only a mile, I don't know if you can see it on the stream, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's only a 5-mile wide channel.
Yep.
Which is not very wide, actually. So that will be a major point of contestation. If you were a ruler, you would want to have some kind of fortified structure there. There was a suggestion that maybe we should build it out of cheese. or melted cheese that the kobolds have decided that they are going to turn into a fondue. But perhaps not.
Yeah,
Perhaps
I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah. There's magic in the world, but there's not that much magic. And that's Disney magic, really,
Yes.
or sort of Willy Wonka magic, which I was always disturbed by. So, anyway, there we are. Mac is onto the problem of oxygen down underground with mushrooms generating oxygen, which slowly makes its way up to the surface, like those hive mind mushroom organisms that stretch in real life for miles. Yes, absolutely.
So on that subject, if we're thinking about this in
Yes.
from a dual standpoint, because at this point this map is going to have a dual mode, so you can look under it.
Oh right, yes.
So we're looking at this now. We're looking at this. Let's make this
Right.
slightly transparent here.
Okay.
Like this.
Yes. So this is
So
Underdark.
we need to create an area under here that represents the Underdark.
Oh, good heavens! I completely agree
And-
with you. Yes.
Yes. So my question is, what shape should this be?
I have another question for you, which we have to do
What?
before we answer your question.
Which is
Do you have oceans in the Underdark?
ah
Now, there are giant lakes of water underneath planet Earth. They're called aquifers. They exist in reality, and that's how we tap in, and that's how we dig wells and boreholes and things. So if we have lakes and oceans underneath the surface, those would most likely correlate to a degree with the giant oceans on the surface.
See, I would
Or
say
not.
they
I mean, I don't know.
because if they did, the entire Underdark would flood. So I would say that they're different. So you could have an area here, for example, which correlates to the Underdark. So this is the
Right.
area that you can walk around in the Underdark.
Yes.
So, for example, like this.
Right.
So this is a massive sort of how many miles wide cavern, and then you have inside of this a lake,
Right.
ocean on one side, for example.
Sure.
And you could even say that it actually goes off this
Yes.
way. But it's actually not what's the word? Doesn't correlate to the real
surface.
world. Yeah, the surface world.
Okay. No, that's absolutely fine. Then what I would certainly do is I would definitely not have it at all the same. I would have it as a lot of series of almost like a tree, if that makes sense.
So you think the Underdark should be like rings around here?
I didn't think about rings, but remember the Underdark is large amounts of caves and caverns interconnected with each other.
Yes, but
So-
this would be the large cave. So,
Okay.
for example, with this,
Right.
just hear me out. So this is a large underground space. There might be
Right.
large pillars that connect the ceiling with the
Wow.
floor of
Okay.
the cavern. So this is
Okay.
miles and miles and miles wide.
Yes.
And then down here, because you've got the crust or whatever
Yes.
it is, you have a
Just
series
branching caves. Lots.
of caves
Yeah.
and caverns and
Okay.
things. that branch off.
Some
Yeah.
really cool things being chatted about. It's not actually, well, there are some big lakes, but it's porous rock. This comes from A.W.M. Perry saying it's impregnated porous rock. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean there aren't big vacuoles, I suppose. So yes, I think something like that, Kara. I think that'll be great. And then we could just have more of those branching out in all different directions from the main cavern, if you like.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the actual main cavern doesn't have an edge on this side because it goes off even further.
Right, it would go off even further.
There's
Yeah.
a few it's
absolutely.
more broken up around the
Okay.
edges, and there's some winding
Yeah,
paths.
and then I'd bring out more underneath the ocean, to be perfectly frank with you.
Really, I was thinking that it would sort of match underneath the land, but if you
Oh, I
want
see.
to-
But hang on. Maybe underneath the oceans, in order for us to get a correlation so that our players can kind of see what's happening, maybe those should be very spider-like, very thin little narrow corridors, because the rock
I
is
see.
compressed by the water on top. I mean, no, that's not how it really works. But just as a visual sort of way, it's like veins in a human body almost. So you've got these different corridors and things, and they're very dangerous to wander through because they could collapse or suddenly fill up with water if there's a breach from above, or something like that, so that the players can go, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. Because to me, that's the biggest threat of the Underdark, is that there isn't the differentiation that we have on the surface. Now, in my personal campaign, my drow are not purely evil. They're Romans, so they're as evil as you can get as a Roman, for example. But we have these. Most major cities have massive elevators which transport people up and down from the drow territory to the surface. And those elevators are big enough to transport animals and cargo and the like. Mm-hmm. And you have to have a pass when you get to the bottom into the Underdark. You have to have a signed pass in that you're allowed to go in there and trade with the drow. And you're monitored by the secret police and that sort of thing. So having this map would be absolutely wonderful from that perspective.
I'm putting like a large thing in the middle so that it kind of supports everything.
Got you.
So from the side,
like giant column.
Yeah, it would kind of look like.
Yes. That's
kind of look like that.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Okay, Cryptic Critter has a question. What's a good starting point for how big my region map should be roughly, mile, kilometer wise? And thank you. So we were just talking about
that. So that maybe 100 miles is a good start for that kind of thing. Smaller or slightly larger, but 100 miles is a good benchmark, I'd say.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is based on that, but it depends on what you're playing as well. So if you're playing a Star Trek game, 100 miles for a map is great if you're going onto a planet. But if you're talking about drawing up your own star system, then 100 miles is definitely the wrong sort of scale to go for. So it depends on your mode of transport. If we had lots of griffins and we had lots of, say, sailing ships and airships, and the players are not likely to, well, they might go on foot, but they could also easily just fly. So it's more World of Warcraft style than anything else.
Yeah.
Then you might want to extend that to 200 miles or 300 miles because it's really easy for them to get around.
Yes.
So, but yes, I think where we are now is pretty good.
Yeah, we've got some great features that have come up from this.
Yes, I love
based
that.
upon the region that we have here, and then also now we've got an Underdark, which I've never done before.
Well, there we go. I think this is certainly cool. So some more questions. Arcadius Ragnall says, will this upload later? Yes, it will be available on my YouTube channel, How to Be a Great GM, which is what you're watching on Arcadis. It is also going to be available on Kaora's Twitch channel as well. So yes, you can grab that, and that is you can see the bottom right. Oh, I put his website, not his Twitch channel. The Twitch channel is the same, except just replace.
You can find the Twitch link on my website. So it's
absolutely
fine.
We got some options. We've got some absolute options. Now there was a suggestion that Lawrence Carnarvon has been suggesting. What if this island, or what if the island this is on is sinking, and the occupants have been trying to stop it over the course of several years? I think what you're talking about there, Lawrence, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I don't think there is ever a bad idea. So even the cheese fondue, by the way, is not a bad idea. Because we're going to sit there going, oh, don't be stupid. It can't be a cheese river. What the hell? But it could be a river that is so thick with sulfur that it's called the Cheese River, but in actual fact, it is this horrific, soupy, sulphurous, laden muck which pours through the Underdark, creating this brilliant yellow river. And if you get into it, you actually can't swim in it because you are less buoyant than the sulfur, so you sink into it like quicksand. That's a terrifying trap. It's a very interesting space. So Someone else was asking how good is my lying skill. Well, there we go. You've just
Deception,
seen that.
rank up.
Yeah. So, So that's something that we can look at. Is that no suggestion is silly, and I always talk about inserting the great giant banana because it gets you to suddenly think, oh yeah, we could have a sulfur-laden river actually.
I had one of those in my game recently. I had a jungle.
Yeah.
And we had the party went past because I saw it one time on a Planet Earth or a documentary that you have these very low-lying rivers that are coming out of caves, and they go past these sulfurous deposits, and they become sort of laden with all these chemicals and all this acid and things like that. And it's fascinating to think that you just sort of wander past one of these very rare or very interesting sort of, oh, that's a river, but it stinks. And why are all these sort of strange, things growing out of it? Or why does it look so weird and milky and disgusting and stuff like that? And so that's really, really fascinating. I love that idea of putting that kind of thing on a map.
And it's actually more frequent than you think. I'm just busy thinking now. I went to an onsen in Japan, which is a public bath. Yeah. And the Japanese are obsessed with building these public baths on sites of natural hot springs, which are sulfurous. They contain various mineral salts and things. And the one that I went to had this very large rock pool, which was a natural spring. A lot of them, they synthesize the water on the site because obviously they don't have access to these things. But this one had a genuine hot spring pool, and it really just looked like a pool of urine.
Oh,
but kind of dirty as well. And I paused. I really paused and went, this is.
Are we supposed to bathe in this?
Yes, because you don't know the customs, so you sort of look around and go, well, But yes, it was that color because it was so enriched with all of the bits and pieces and the like. So, terrifying prospect. But suddenly these yellow pools, they were great for the skin, very relaxing. And once you sort of got over the idea and you were just sort of lying there, it was very nice. But yeah. Rather terrible.
Very strange.
Yes.
Very strange.
Yeah. The River Nile turns red because of volcanic eruptions, which contain sulfur. Absolutely. Iron, of course, in rock. We know iron turns rocks that wonderful orange color, which you wouldn't think. South Africa has mostly orange rock on the surface, as a matter of fact. We've got lots of iron.
Yeah, very rich in iron.
Yeah, lots of iron-laden rock. And as a matter of fact, if you get a thin sheet of rock, you can actually hit it, and it has quite a musical note to it,
like a tang.
But you can actually build a musical instrument out of a collection of rocks that you sort of find the right pitch and stuff. One person is convinced that Africa is the site of an alien landing place, and they used to use the music of the rocks to launch their spaceships up into space.
Right. That's a new one. I've never heard of that before, but that's certainly a theory.
He's not saying aliens, but it's definitely anyway, I mean it's interesting.
I do love some of the wackier conspiracy theories to do with history. I'm not convinced about the ancient aliens visiting Earth, but I do love some of the conspiracy theories about much older civilizations than we're aware of, because everyone thinks, oh yes, the Egyptians came around, right. and yes, there was a few sort of city states and things before that, but generally speaking, it was around that time frame that everybody started settling down into large settlements and cities and things. But there's a lot of evidence that there was Göbekli Tepe.
Yes.
The site in Turkey.
I would love to go there.
Yeah. It's much older and much more advanced than people think.
Well,
I love some of the even wackier ones where it's like, oh yes, there was even more ancient civilizations than that, but there's no record of them. So it's like, well, there's no proof for them. That's then.
My favorite one is Star Trek's one, where the dinosaurs all jumped into spaceships and flew off and ended up in the Delta Quadrant. And then didn't believe in the origin story of Earth. I love that. That was actually it was a very good episode in terms of scientific inquiry versus political dogma, and that's what the whole episode was about. Was science might say this, but politics doesn't want that. So there's discreditation and all that kind of things that happen, which is wonderful. So. There we are. There's mentioning, of course, Lake Tanganyika in Africa. Lara Lepine says Lake Tanganyika. It's very dangerous because it does release large amounts of gas. I think it's methane gas, which is very, very, very dangerous, making the lake very, very, very poisonous. The Voth, John Mystery, you score 500 experience points for correctly naming the Star Trek species from Voyager. There you are. So good on you. You're the first one who
bonus
mentioned
star for you.
There we go. Absolutely. 500 experience points. You can spend that with your next gaming session. Just tell your GM you legally earned it. So yes, and it's Ben Nicholson. You get 500 experience points as well because he says the Star Trek one is the truth, and you can't persuade me otherwise. So yes, that's actually what happened to the dinosaurs. The impact crater is not actually an impact crater of an asteroid. It's actually the blast radius of the mothership taking off. I think
Amazing.
that could work. That could certainly work.
Amazing.
Very, very well. Yangtze River in China, known as the Yellow River. It's actually one of my favorite pieces of piano music, is the Yellow River Piano Concerto in 3 movements. I'm sure you're very familiar with that, Keira. It's one of your favorites too, I'm sure.
It is. I love classical music.
There we go. That was a stab in the dark, wasn't it?
I have a question for you, Guy. How often have you thought about creating worlds with an alternate reality Earth scenario? So an alternate history or some other kind of...
I absolutely adore the creation of alternate Earth history, but I've never played in the game with one, and I don't know why. I think when you have alternative Earth history, there's always a problem. It's the same problem that you have when you're running a modern day campaign, where you don't have the occult, where you don't have monsters and things. Your adventures become quite, your encounters, I should say, become very, very, very much the same because you're fighting humans.
Yes.
So if you do a World War II game, for example, yes, you can put in occultist Nazis and do an Indiana Jones on the crowd. But generally speaking, your combatants will always be humans. So they're always going to react in the same way. And yes, you can play around with different things. But I love alternate history. I've just realized that Amazon Prime here in the UK has The Man in the High Castle as a series. Now, I only got to season 2 on that. So I'm very excited
they're finished
to see.
now, aren't they?
They are.
3 seasons. So
That's
it's
it.
not...
Well, it was only the run of the story. So
Yeah.
I love alternative histories, and
The best role-playing game that I played with
yes,
not really an alternate history, although I suppose it is, was Mutant Year Zero. I got the book a few years ago at Dragon Meet, and it's a scenario in which the world ended because of it's a post-apocalyptic scenario,
right?
But it introduces a lot more weird and wonderful things because of radiation mutation and things like that. So that's the kind of thing I think can add quite a lot of spice to your game, even though it's set on Earth. But generally speaking, there's not many out there like systems and settings, because probably is pretty boring. I've got to be honest.
Well, look, I mean, my favorite system of all time is the D20 Modern system, and they have an expansion book called The Past, which would allow you to play during the Renaissance period, the Tudors, the Stuarts, and pick a period in history, and you can play with the modern sort of space. So that would be my go-to if you wanted to do an alternative history sort of situation. And you then look at the map, and what I like with High Castle, Man in High Castle, is that they show you North America divided between the Japanese and between the Japanese and the Germans, and there's sort of neutral space amongst the Rockies. That was really interesting from that kind of perspective, to say, okay, well, this is how far they got, and then they made some kind of peace treaty. So that kind of worked. Having spent time in Japan, you kind of go, well, maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't have. I'm not entirely sure. It really depends on Hitler, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I've played quite a lot of Hearts of Iron 4,
Right.
which is a game where you play as you play in the world, the entire world, and you play during 1936 till 1945 or 1948,
Right.
I can't remember. So you play through World War II.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different things you can change in that game, and it can get incredibly interesting. And there's some really great mods where you play in alternate history, where you play in a scenario, for example, where Germany did win World War One. So how does that change the world, and how has that changed everything? And all the borders are different, nations are different. It's incredibly fascinating, and I do find it very compelling. I just feel like if you were playing it in an RPG, it would be tough to make it work.
Well, your biggest challenge is metagame,
Yeah,
because a lot of people know how history played through, and
of course.
then when you're doing alternative history, if a player goes, oh well, let's go to Rouen in France and hide from the Russians there because the Russians counter invaded Germany. If in your alternative world you have actually, well, Rouen has actually been destroyed when the Germans started their scorched earth policy, the players are going, well, I don't know the parameters of your world. I know what real world was. So I think that could also be another thing.
Yeah, I think if you not as a little tidbit or advice or anything to dungeon masters, but if you can avoid your players metagaming, even subconsciously, or just try and do it, because I think it does help the game. I hate it when players assume things about the world or about the plot or the story because they've had some kind of prior experience. That's why I don't typically like to play in the Forgotten Realms or any other big settings.
No, absolutely. It's like trying to play in a Star Wars campaign set during the original movies. You go, well, you can't be a Jedi because they were all hunted down.
You can't improvise as well, and people have all these expectations about the setting. It's very difficult to.
It's an interesting. It's a challenge. It is.
It can be fun, but running a long-term campaign would really be a slight struggle.
I think it would be. Let's go to chat, see what we've got happening in chat. We have 120 people watching the stream. That's absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
That's super cool. Hopefully we will keep you entertained a little bit longer. I see we've been going for an hour now. We still have people watching, so we're doing something right.
Fantastic.
Either that or you've all got nothing on. Either way, we're really happy to have you here and keeping us company. So we kind of got a little bit sidetracked on that one. I might have missed some questions coming in.
Well, we have nearly finished this coastline.
Yes. Okay, so Torben BK asks, how do you draw land countries, like the borders between the different kingdoms? Will you do dotted lines or a color base? It's actually a very good question. I admit, when I am drawing countries or drawing maps like this, or taking maps from say Wonderdraft or Incarnate or whatever program I've used, and I'm trying to put borders in, I do struggle to put borders in with clarity so that you can still see the underlying map and you can still see the border, and it doesn't just become this spider web of colors and layers and things. Do you have a trick that you do?
Yeah, I use Photoshop and I use layers. I turn them on and off.
So in other words, all right, you just use layers and things.
Well, that's the nice thing about Photoshop and being a map maker. But obviously, not everybody can do that.
No.
But yeah, there's honestly not many good ways of doing it. Dashed lines, names. I also kind of like the idea that they use in some games where they have all the city names, blah blah blah, and the cities dotted about. And then to signify that this is a unified area, they'll put a shield or an icon of some kind. And
right, I was about to say, I just put a name. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know that this area is the kingdom of Blob. And then over here you've got the kingdom of Blur or whatever it is. So you don't mess around with colors and you don't mess around with borders, but you have separate out these areas with some kind of icon or visual indicator.
No, you're absolutely right. You can do that. There are some options you can take in terms of slight color overlay. I think it's always best to have two maps. One where you've got the heavy detailing for a pretty map, which is your geography and your buildings and things, and then another one where you've kind of got, well, it's this area, it's this area, it's that area. Unless you're playing in a game where standing on the border is particularly critical, and you have the abstract concept, by the way, of borders that don't follow geography, then you do a second map where you do your layers. But traditionally, borders were always divided along a river or a mountain range, or a wall. The Romans were famous for that. Okay, Scotland, sucks to be you. Here's Hadrian's Wall, and we're not going anywhere further north.
Which is strange, because they didn't really necessarily shy away from conquering barbarians, but the Scots, nope. They didn't want to have anything to do with the Scots.
It really just boils down to, it's like, what are we going to get? Some soggy land, and that's it. I mean, England, they got wonderful things like tin, obviously,
yes.
And wool, which was really great. Although I think the wool was actually a bit later, but tin and wool was the big thing. But they kind of had that. So Scotland was like, oh hi, we'll offer you a spot to land your longboats on. And the Romans were like, no. And it took the Vikings 700 years to go, actually, that's not a bad idea. We can put our boots there. Yeah, good. Okay, we'll take Scotland. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, back to chat. Good heavens. Oh, boy.
So, Guy, back to map as well.
Oh, do we have
We
to?
have... we've been raided by World Anvil, by the way. Thank you so much for the rating of 42 people.
Yes,
Thank
look
you
at that.
so
160
much.
people about to realise that they don't want to watch the stream.
So welcome to the madness. We are chatting just a whole bunch of stuff about world building, and we're also drawing
and
a
not
map.
world building.
Well, we're trying to world build, but we're drawing this, and we're coming up with things. So far, we've done an overground map that I've just finished, a nice little coastline, and we have an Underdark area as well. So this is going to be a dual map, which is going to be really fun.
Yes, and so we're answering your questions. If you have questions about world building, we're answering those in the stream. We're just hanging out and having a good afternoon, a good evening, good Saturday evening. We're not trying to kill each other, because that's something that we do quite frequently. Or actually, it's me being defeated by Kara.
Except
sometimes when I can pull a rabbit out of a hat. So AWM Perry asks a question, and then immediately follows it once I've said it, that this is not actually a question. So the not question is, that finger and the promontory to the southwest of the map, yes, that one there, they could have matching fortresses defending the estuary with its strategically important shipyards, and call it the Jaws of... and then the Jaws of Ellipses. So the Jaws of... well, we don't know the race yet, so we can't really give it a name.
Okay, so we'll leave it as the Jaws of for now, because that's the first name suggestion we've had.
The Jaws of Crom. No, get sued by Conan, won't we?
Let's just put
Jaws of Ellipses. Just dot. And of course,
we'll come up with that later.
I like that other font actually. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Which font?
The first one that I came up with.
Oh, Moon Firefly? Okay.
Moon Firefly? There we go. This program was not sponsored by the maker of Moon Firefly font.
No, that's this is one of the fonts that I bought.
You bought it?
Font.
Wow, look at you.
But it
professional.
Is nice. Yeah.
Wow, okay, it doesn't like the cap, so it's just...
No, it has to be lowercase.
Yeah, it's got to be lowercase. All right, so that's fine. Back to some more questions. Wait, how are you doing on the map? You're now adding in random islands. Look at you sneaky
snake. Yes. So this is one of the things I was going to say was...
Okay, yes.
Actually, I'm not going to add that to that. Let's just leave that for now. What kind of... how many islands and things do we want on this? Because this is obviously... You don't get a straight coastline without any islands. But do you want a few areas in here where there's tons of island, like an island chain up here, or what are you thinking? What do you get from this?
Choose one of the things on that list, and let's put that on an island chain.
I'd say
Goblin
that.
Swamp? Mountaintop City?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's build an island where we have a mountaintop city. So that's going to need to be quite a big sort of landmass.
Here
Could be.
or up here.
I think up there actually, the
Up here?
northwest corner,
Mhm.
because that eastern section is I think quite a good space for a naval battle using a certain set of rules that have just been released recently by a very well-known published author.
Plugging. Plugging.
All right, so remember you're going to put a volcano on this island. So
Yes,
off you go on
yes,
that one.
yes.
I'm going to go and look at some more questions. Alexander Nagel says, "Have you ever served time in a Turkish prison?"
Nope.
Nope. I haven't. I have watched the film Midnight Express. That was a grueling film to watch. Have you seen that film? It was made
No,
in
I
the
haven't, no.
1970s, I believe.
Mm.
Yeah,
No,
it's about
I
an
haven't.
American who went to Turkey foolishly
Mm-hmm.
and was trying to smuggle, I think it was marijuana out of Turkey,
Oh.
and got arrested and sent to prison. And the relations with the Turks at the time between America and them were very strained, and so they couldn't get him out. So he had to serve time. And whilst in there were horrific things that were done to him. And his fiancée, I think she was, or his wife, would go and visit him, and eventually they stopped her from seeing him because they realised it was keeping him sort of going, and their obsession was to break this American.
Wow.
So yeah.
Okay, that sounds horrific. Lovely.
It really is one of those grueling films, and very graphic film for the time period as well.
Mhm.
So. Yeah, but interestingly enough, during that exact same time period, South Africa was under sanction from the rest of the world because of their apartheid policies and their segregation policies.
Yeah.
But Turkey did not have anything to do with those sanctions. So what would happen is South Africa would send all of its goods to Turkey. Turkey would repackage them into Turkish product packages and then sell them on to the rest of the world who didn't have sanctions on Turkey.
Sneaky.
So there's always a way.
Yeah,
So there you are.
sneaky.
So have you served any time in prison? Is that too personal a question?
Me? No.
No.
Oh.
No, I've never served time in prison either, thankfully. I've been to some prisons. I want to go to Alcatraz and just see what Alcatraz is like.
Oh, yes.
I've done the one in South Africa, Robben Island, which is where Nelson Mandela was captured.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a truly infuriating prison because you can see Cape Town. You can just see the freedom and happiness and people going about their lives. Alcatraz is exactly the same, of course. But
yeah, so it's just this massive prison, and then you got this bustling metropolitan city.
Life
yeah.
happening, and you can't get anywhere near it. So anyway, DCSX Minima says that he believes the Romans didn't go into Scotland because it was too cold. So they are.
Yeah.
They didn't ever get into Sweden and Norway. So perhaps there's something about that. Maybe the Greeks went. The Romans went. It's just too cold.
Yep, they just hated the cold.
Dibuyaro says, what about modern day campaign with magic and monsters? Like maybe post-apocalyptic game where monsters from another realm bring about the apocalypse in the modern day age. Absolutely. Again, I can't think of systems well, there's you could go mutants and masterminds as a system. You could use that. D20 Modern, once again, they had an expansion called Urban Arcana, which allowed you to bring in magic and the like.
I had this idea when I was doing my game design degree to create an RPG choose your own adventure story game where everybody was worried about the energy crisis, and just off the France was leading the way with a fusion reactor, and it went crazy and it went wild, and it started pumping out exotic matter, and it blew up. And it caused a worldwide apocalyptic scenario, and everything went wild. But in France, it was the source of all these exotic particles, which turned out to be magic. And it made weird and wonderful creatures and things to start happening all across the world. But that was kind of the epicenter of the sort of the event. And it was a really fun little story. I really had fun sort of coming up with a lot of the modern day like cities and locations and places, but getting completely changed by all these events. And so that's really a really good way of doing it if you wanted to go that route for
What
for a
system
modern
were
day
you thinking of using for that?
well, for the game itself, because this was a game design course, so we had to come up with a game for it. It was our own creation, so it was a more of a gamified sort of. You've got your normal HP and your mana and all the rest of it, or your exotic particles that we're calling them and stuff like that. And it was more based upon sort of a bit more of a. What are they? The Steve
Jackson.
Steve
Fighting
Jackson
fantasy.
choose your own adventure
Yeah.
fighting fantasy
Lovely.
kind of system.
Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah, okay. Was anyone else holding their breath when they turned on CERN and the Large Hadron Collider?
I think that's about the same kind of time that I was thinking about it and we were doing it.
Yes, I certainly was. I wasn't particularly nervous because, of course, if it did obliterate the entire universe, you wouldn't really know about it. So, but it was a curious moment to watch them go. All right, let's smash them together. Oh, we're still here. Okay, good. That's not how the
Very
universe
low
works.
chance of a black hole opening and
just sucking
completely
the
the
entire
world
planet.
ending.
Can you imagine how embarrassing that would be? The aliens busy watching. They're like, oh, black hole. Yeah, I told you. I knew it wasn't going to be a nuclear war.
That's what got them in the end.
Got him in the end. Yeah. World Anvil says can't grow grapes, can't contract Romans. No, that's true. Absolutely. So maybe that's as far as the wine would keep on special delivery from France. It's like, well, it can't go any further than that. Sorry. Scotland's got Pete, says Deus Ex Minima. Love that idea. The Mystery of the Ninth Legion, says Shane Sangster. Now, has anyone watched the movie The Eagle? Did you watch the movie The Eagle?
I did, yes.
I loved it. I absolutely
thought it was
loved it.
good.
And it's not because it had Channing Tatum in his underwear at all.
Yeah, of course not.
No, definitely not. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, because there's another one called The Order, which came out at a very similar time. They were competing, in that sort of Roman story space that was happening. But I really like The Eagle. I thought that was a lot of fun. Where are we now? Let's see. The Scots said, "Bar that now, we dinna have to build a dike or a oin." I'm not entirely sure what that means, but that's what happens when you speak to people from Scotland anyway. You kind of walk away vaguely thinking you understand what's going on.
Just nodding and going, yes. All right, thank you. Thank you for your input. Have you seen Scottish Twitter?
Oh my God.
There's a Scottish Twitter on Reddit where basically it finds these tweets by Scottish people who write how they speak, and some of them are amazing, just completely unintelligible, and then occasionally there's an English word, it's like spelt properly, and it's like, okay, great.
Well,
it's fun.
For those of you that have just joined us, Kaora is using Photoshop to design this map in, and we're taking various suggestions from you folks. So there we are. Next question. Handsome Aaron says, shouldn't the size of the map be largely based on the scope you want for your campaign?
Yes.
Well, yes, and yes, I suppose. I've always been accused of never being able to run a small event, which I think I managed to do with Avernus. I mean, Avernus was pretty self-contained. Ghost of Saltmarsh was contained. But usually my PCs end up going all over the world, in which case then I need to have region maps everywhere. But they don't stay around very long to warrant having to draw 10,000 region maps to cover the space, usually. So...
Yeah. Do you want me to start working on this Underdark, or should we come up with some things to put on the Overground map first?
Well, we've got a whole bunch of things we want to try and include in the Overground, which was suggested by everybody. What do you want to do? You're the artist. You're the artist here. And what do you guys want to see? Do you want to see more of the Underdark development?
Yes.
Or more of the surface development?
Yes, exactly. Let's get chat to decide.
Yeah, you guys are here.
What shall I work on? Shall I do more, start doing biomes and where things are on the Overground, or do the Underdark?
That's a good question. WD Michael says, Kaora, how did you do this wizardry of cleaning up the coastline? You used the fill option, didn't you?
Yes, I did. So I basically, after I had done the line art, so you can see the line art in black, like this.
Mm.
I grab the magic wand tool, which is up here, click on this side, and it fills the thing with the magic wand tool. Then I go up, expand it by 1, so it makes it a little bit cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fill it on a separate layer with the color of choice. Well, so
Yeah, absolutely. You know, do you ever use select by color?
not often.
That could also.
But
work
yeah,
too.
you can sometimes do that kind of thing. Yeah.
Who did it? A.W.M. Perry. Underground, overground, wombling free. The wombles of Wimbledon common are we. Making what is it? Making use of the things that we find. No, there's a chorus and there's a line in there before. I only watched this thing 30 odd years ago. I loved the wombles. I need to visit Wimbledon Common. Does it still exist? Is it safe to go to?
I don't know.
I need to
Is
go
it
to
safe? No,
Yeah.
it's a radioactive wasteland.
Hey, I don't know. Strange things happen in London, and it's been 30 years since they made the show. I'm sure dear old Uncle Bulgaria is no longer there.
Oh yeah, oh dear.
Um,
Okay, so let's do the overground.
I
Because
should probably see what chat said. Sorry, I'm still sitting on old
I'm
chat.
watching my chat on Twitch, and they're saying do the Underdark in chat.
Underdark, underground, overground says one of them. Underdark, overworld says one of them. Overground. It's pretty mixed actually, but let's.
Well, I get to choose then, so I'm going to do the.
Thanks so much for participating in the stream chat.
Thank
Kale's
you
going
for
to
your
ignore you
participation.
anyway. All right, so yes, you're going to do what? Sorry.
The biomes. Now, this is a nice way of doing it. I think you have to figure out whereabouts in a world this is. So you can make that call, guy. Is this a more northerly region, or is this a more southerly region? Where do you imagine this would be if it was on Earth?
I would posit that is because of the fractal nature of it. It's kind of I don't know why it kind of reminds me of South America. So we're sort of looking at the southern parts that towards the Tierra del Fuego, the southern tip. So very very cold in the south.
Yes.
Jungles in the north. I don't know. That's kind of what's grabbing me at the moment.
Okay. So what I'm going to be doing at this point is basically I'm going to be using color to work out effectively temperature.
Right.
So we're going to have these darker colors, lighter colors, and we're going to be working out sort of hotter areas. So this is more jungly. Basically, this is a temperature map, and then we can work out as we go down how cold and things are getting.
So you do temperature maps. Okay, that's interesting.
Sometimes.
And is there a reason why you're doing it just off the diagonal?
Yes.
Would you tell us the reason?
Yes, I think it looks cool.
All right, there we go. Can't get more than that. So,
and since this is a region map, it could actually be the case that this is this map that we're looking at was drawn because they don't know the whole world. Actually, this is actually like slightly tilted on the world map.
That certainly could work. Certainly could work. Well, someone has just said that this is an absolute recreation of Laurel and Hardy, but with Guy and Kaora. So clearly, I agree. I mean, obviously, I am definitely Laurel in this case for obvious reasons. Yeah, I thoroughly love their comedy. And when you watch it knowing that they were the first to do stuff, it's still very funny to this day.
Oh, yeah.
There's one sequence that they did where they were climbing down a ladder and they end up, well, obviously, Laurel ends up inside Stan's waistcoat. It's the other way around. Sorry, Stanley ends up inside Laurel's waistcoat. It's absolutely comedic gold. It's amazing timing that they had. So there we go. Someone was saying that north for a South African is definitely warmer. Yes, as you go north, you get towards the Congo, and then the Sahara Desert, which doesn't get much warmer than that. So Yeah, so southern is always a choice. All right, John Mystery says a desert of iron sand in the narrow area in the south of the map. A large logistical issue for a conflict and a valuable resource for iron production. So that would be at that sort of thinning point down there. We certainly could put in a desert there. It kind of screws with your temperature gauge, though, doesn't it?
Kind of, but it could be just a very dry area. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be sand. That's true.
No,
that's true.
So I'm going to put a sort of a grayish yellow color here.
Okay.
Because I'm imagining a rocky kind of desert. Something very sort of just dried out. So let's put that down there.
There we go. All right, that's nice. I like that.
And what did they say this was?
What? Where?
A desert of iron.
Iron, yes. A desert of iron sand. So it would actually be very red.
Yes, it would be. So yes, I should make it red.
Desert of iron. The Iron Desert, as it would probably be called. Or Feros. Yeah, Ferocia. I don't know. Feros. Well, it's better than patina. I mean,
I'm going to leave it for that for now. We can come back to the names.
Patina Desert. It sounds quite nice, actually. Well, actually, it's the crust that forms on iron rock. No. Feros Badlands, says Joe D. That's not bad, the Feros Badlands.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, Feros Badlands. Badlands is always cool. I mean, Badlands always inspire stuff. So there's a question really early on in terms of building lore and that sort of stuff. The Feros Badlands is like, well, naturally we think of bandits hiding out in these Badlands or marquee, something hiding out in the Badlands.
Yes.
The rusted sand. Oxydolius, some interesting names coming through.
Oxydolius?
Yeah, oxide.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Mind the step. Oh, dear God. Mind the step, says A.W.M. Perry. Yes, the step. Steppe. God's Blood Sand. Yes, God's Blood Sand certainly is very nice. Metallica, says David Lucioli. Lucioli? Is the double C a hard K or is it an S? Cryptic Critter says, a little off topic, but do you have live streams answering questions about specific problems DMs can run into? Yes, I do, and I run those tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, same time, 7 p.m. GMT, and we spend an hour where we talk about Kickstarters. This particular Saturday, Sunday, I'm talking about some really cool stuff that came out of Bristol Convention that I went to last weekend. I got some really cool dice sent to me. Now, you can't see them in the stream, and I'll try and show them off better tomorrow, but they're sort of like yellow, but they've got little flecks of metal in them, so they're quite shiny. They're quite nice.
What do you think of that dice that where they glow? They've got LEDs in them. What's the name of that Kickstarter?
LEDs. Oh yeah. I've seen that one.
It's amazing. I'm very excited for that. I think those will be. I'm not into dice, like copious amounts of dice too much.
Oh yeah.
But I think that these are a game changer in the sense that they're doing something very different and very, very, very cool.
Okay, I've had dice that glow. Hackstech sent me glowing dice. Those were quite nice. And then Easy Roller sent me some glowing dice as well. But those just glowed because of the nuclear radioactive waste that they dipped the dice into.
Incredibly dangerous to hold. It's fine.
Yeah. Warning, do not hold these unless wearing a hazmat level 12 suit. Yeah. Xander the Green says, how about a mountain range on the northeast? We'll get to mountain ranges. Do you use mountain ranges to control precipitation in your worlds? Do you go in for that sort of thing?
Yes, sometimes.
I
think we're kind of at that point now, to be honest.
Sorry, what?
I think we're kind of at that point now.
Are we sort of getting to that point? We also need to start thinking about, are we getting to the point where some of us have a natural dependency on coffee, which is sort of
I see.
very empty right now. So
Are we going for a break while I sit here?
well, you have liquid. You can carry on drawing.
I'll carry on. Guy's going
Just
for a break to get some coffee.
and no one will blame me, I hope.
No.
So yes,
Guy
now
needs coffee to
I do
keep up.
actually. Well,
So while Guy is getting some coffee, I will have a little look at this Underdark. Now,
sneaky. Okay, well, when I come
yes.
back, I want that finished.
All right. Okay. Quick.
Yeah.
Quick.
I'll be back.
So I have never actually done an Underdark map before. So this is kind of strange in the sense that I don't really know how I'm going to do it. What I'm thinking I could probably do is, instead of having a coastline, so this isn't going to be a coastline in the traditional sense. It's instead going to be sort of a cliff. So we're going to have all the way around. This Underdark area is going to have a like this going all the way around, a little bit like the Avernus map that I did. So it shows that there's an upwards sort of incline going down, and some of these areas are going to be sort of lower than others. So I think that's a good way of doing it, to show an underground area. I'm a little bit nervous about doing some of these tiny areas. It should be okay to draw them like this, and then draw little cliffs. But what that will allow me to do is, obviously, some of these areas are going to have some really amazing sort of stalactites and tall areas, and I think they will look very nice next to these sort of cliffs. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a good way of doing it, or should I do something a little bit more traditional with a line? I can only see the chat from my Twitch channel, by the way. I can't see YouTube chat, so don't ask me questions directly. Guy will have to read those. Hello, welcome to the stream. I am streaming with Guy. He has disappeared. I like the cliffs. The cliffs are fine to me. That looks good. Awesome. Okay. Well, we're gonna do that for the whole thing then. I will have to do all of that on a separate layer, because I've realized now that I've done it on the wrong layer. But that's okay. We can just kind of go over this with a little bit more finesse and make things look nice. And I'm not going to be able to finish this by the time Guy gets back, but this is the idea that I think I'm going to keep with and stick with for the cliffs all around the Underdark. And we can create some nice elevation and nice looking things going around, stalagmites and things. Unfortunately, I can't remember which one is the one that hangs from the ceiling. Stalactites, perhaps. I always get those confused, but we're not going to be able to do those because we don't really have a ceiling. But we can make do with these kind of structures, these massive, these kind of structures from the floor. So that's sort of just as good in a way. Question. So what size and measurement is your hex grid for the world you are building right now? So we decided that in order to create a really nice region map, the hex grid for this map is 1 mile. So each one of these hexes is going to be 1 mile. So, and I think somebody in chat said that the total width or length, I can't remember which one, there was 77 hexes. I'll count them at the end of this stream and do a little measurement grid at the bottom of the map here. But I think it's pretty close to 80 perhaps, or that kind of thing. And me and Guy were saying that 100 is pretty good for a region map because it gives you a lot of places to play with in an area that it takes maybe a day or 2 or 3 for players to explore around, which is a pretty decent enough amount of space, I would say. How is your coffee, Guy?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's
Welcome back.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
So I was just saying to the chat, I think this is probably the direction I'll go with.
You drew a stalagmite.
Yeah, so all around the edges of the underground caves, we're going to do basically like I did for Avernus.
Lovely.
So it's going to be, it's not going to be a line like this.
Yeah.
Like a coastline.
Yeah. No, lovely.
I'm going to do cliffs around the entire
invert
edges. It's going to be tricky for these kind of areas.
But still, even if you just sort of hint at it, I think it'll be fine. You know, so if you do a little drop down, little bit of shading, yeah, that'll work. It's to give the sense that these are not, because if you look at it, that's half a mile in width, that passageway, or not. This is where it's a case of saying, dear player, yes, I understand the grid is a mile in width, but actually, this is not a quarter mile wide passageway. It's only 20 feet.
Representational.
Yes, there is artistic license in place here.
Yes.
That was the question that I had for you. When you say the hex is a mile wide, is that from the furthest point to the furthest point of the hex?
Yes. Now that's.
Was it the shortest point? I mean.
I don't know about that. You can decide that.
We can decide that. Yay. So there we are. Lawrence Carnivan, another question, says, hang on. Firstly, John Mystery says a temple on top of a tall stalagmite could be interesting. Well, we've got the city on top of the volcano. It's on top of the mountain, isn't it? That
yes,
you drew so beautifully.
There are many opportunities for us to add in these kinds of things. I would say that's too much detail at the moment. What we need to figure out right now is some of the more major parts of the map. So mountains and forests and rivers.
So, Lawrence Carnivan has asked, who lives in the Underdark? Is it your average drow? Well, no, it's not, because that's copyright, so it's your average dark elf. Or maybe some kind of reptile people. I think it should be multiple options. So here's an example where region maps might help us. No, don't finish that word. Don't finish that word. We're going to get attacked by Hasbro will arrive. So here's an option for you. Have you ever drawn a map this way? How many races, or let me rephrase, how many kingdoms should we have in this area?
Well, that depends on the technology level, I would say.
It does, because technically that entire space would be a kingdom, because usually kingdoms were... The definition of a kingdom is that you can travel... You can't just walk from one side to the other and be done with it, unless you're the Vatican or something like that. Usually it's quite a large space. Because we could have a lot of little tribal villages in here.
Yes.
Separated by 10, 12, 15 miles. That's something that we have to remember, is that this looks like a big continent, but it actually isn't.
Yes, and also one of the things that we can do that could potentially give us a little bit more room to work with is this is a natural barrier. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the wrong pen type. This is a natural barrier. Sorry, I'm just changing the color so it's nice and obvious. Which means that we can have a people down here that are distinct from any people up here. Because conflict between these two areas is going to happen on a geographical level, but possibly a cultural level as well.
Okay.
So so we could definitely have at least 2 kingdoms or 2 cultures that are doing things.
A lot of people in chat are saying 5. We should aim for 5.
5 seems quite a lot.
It's quite tight.
I would say that potentially, if we wanted to add another one, what we could do is we could put mountains coming along here.
Yes.
And separate these 2.
Yes, that's exactly.
So we could have
there
this
we go.
Kind of thing going on.
There we go. And then remember, we've got the people who are going to live on the mountain on that island. So there's our 4th.
Yep.
So, would it be interesting if the bay in the southeast there, if that was another faction of merfolk or Sahaugen or Tritons or something?
Yeah. So that gives us our 5. Quite easily.
And what I liked about what you were saying is, in order for those two kingdoms to be separated, even though they're so close, is we're going to put a mountain range in between them.
Yeah, we're just going to put a massive old mountain range here. So they have this trade or this conflict that could happen between this area, but generally speaking, they are cut off from one another.
Will the Badlands be neutral space?
I imagine so, or I imagine that they're fighting over control of it in some way, whether or not that's economically fighting or actual wars have taken place in the past or currently. That would be something we could think about later. But yeah, I that's how I imagine splitting up this space.
Beautiful. Make it so.
Make it so.
The Dungeon Tomb asks, where did you get the hex grid from for Adobe Photoshop? Because I've been looking for it for ages and no luck.
You can very easily create a hex grid with this pattern.
So like a sort of fishy, shapey thingy.
Yep. And this is on my Patreon. You can go find this. If you come to my Discord, I will send you this file. You basically just select it all, go to Photoshop, define pattern, and create a pattern, and then you can do whatever you like with it. It creates a recurring pattern.
Well, there you go. How wonderful is that? I'm not part of your Patreon. Not your Patreon, your Discord.
No, you're not.
And I was about to break the stream by bringing up my Discord window, which I realise is exactly on that one. So, second-hand samurai. He shared your Patreon, or she, or they, I'm not sure. Second-hand samurai has shared your Patreon. I'm going to share it to the rest of the world. Ta-da! There we go. And I do feel that I should point out that I have a Patreon as well.
Oh yes, that's right.
But I don't have any maps on it. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. Actually, I have a map every month. I make a map in Dungeon Fog. With an adventure that corresponds to that. Actually,
you've done many maps for your book that's just come out.
Oh my god, yes, we did so many maps.
So many maps.
Got to the point where I was sick of doing maps because it's basically the same map every single time because it's ships of different species, different races and things. So, and there's the Discord share which I've just got also. So that's lovely. This is Kara's Discord. So there we are, and then my Discord, because I also have a Discord, because reasons.
Plug the Discord. Sorry, I've got a terrible cough.
I'd actually rather just plug the Patreon, really. But okay, so now you're drawing this sort of brownish shape.
Yes.
This is going to be the mountains.
Yes, it is. So the reason I'm doing this is because one of the things that I found very much applies when you're drawing a map is making things look aesthetically interesting or pleasing to the eye. And drawing a mountain range like this. So if you draw a straight mountain range like this, you draw the, mountains like this.
Yes.
It looks terribly boring.
It does. It really does. I'll tell you a story about how that. I'll tell you how
it looks terribly boring.
That shattered my confidence as a map maker when I was young. I'll tell you that story later on.
But what I like to do is I like to use a lot of curves and a lot of very sort of these kinds of shapes where you get very sort of nice sort of bendy lines where they kind of come in on one another. There's a bit of the golden ratio in there and a little bit of just creating something that's very nicely shaped like a bum, like just nicely, like
you're about homeless people.
No, not just homeless people, just just curved. We should probably change the subject before we break TOS. But I think that makes a much better looking mountain range. And even though what I'm going to do after this is go in and actually draw the mountains like I usually do in this representational style, I feel like when I do my sketchiness and I map things out, this helps me create a more sort of nice shape to my mountains.
There we are. Nice
and I can
shape.
make little mountains over here because this kind of connects up to this, so it adds a nice little corridor here, which is very nice.
That is a very small set of mountains. Do you think it would be mountains, or at this scale, do you think that would be more sort of rolling hills?
Rolling hills, very hot, it's like an area between mountains, which is much more sort of perhaps a plateau here.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
There we go.
Now we've got this major mountain range here.
Yeah, we're gonna have some mountains in the south, or just no?
Yeah, so this is what I was going to say. What do we want? Where else do we want them?
What about on the sea coast itself, towards the jaws of ellipses?
So here, sort of on this over here. This means that this culture down here has less access to this sea, because the coastline here will be cliff-like. There'll be cliffs along the coastline.
Yes.
There won't be a lot of areas of low elevation, which I'm totally fine with.
What I like about that is it explains a few things. And when you look at a map, oftentimes these things need to be understood. If, for example, the central culture were to be particularly militant, there would be a very strong question as to why did they not invade the south?
Yes.
Well, now we know they couldn't just sail across the land. They would have to go through those badlands, which are a natural choke point, and that's why they were their advance was retarded in geographical terms. See, that's a correct use of that word.
I know why you said it. I know it.
So that's a good example of geography helping us to tell our story a little bit better.
Yes, I agree. I think that's great. That's a great natural barrier here as well. You have the Badlands here, so this culture is very much isolated from this one, which means that they are much more separated from one another.
There you are. Someone has also just pointed out that if you sort of squint your eyes a little bit, this does look like Western Europe, with a very squat England. France has, Spain has ruptured. Portugal has completely gone away. And North Africa has joined where the Italian boot should be. Kinda. You really have to use it. You use your imagination.
Yeah,
You really
I get it. I kind of get it.
Mitt Walker 123. We're using Photoshop. Kara's using Photoshop. I'm not using anything.
Guy's not doing anything.
I'm just sitting here. John Mystery asks, will this map be available for use after it's finished?
Sure, in some way or another. We haven't made any of the decisions. You see, when we decided we were going to do this, we said to one another, okay, let's do a stream. Let's just do a test stream, see if people want to watch, see how far we get and what happens. And then we'll make progressive changes and things to bits and pieces as we go along. So yeah, this map will be available if it ever gets done, and if we decide we're going to put things with it. And
Release
it. It'll be fun.
I had to share what Secondhand Samurai shared in Twitch. I've shared it now for everybody. Are you into role-playing games? Do you want to talk about it? Head to the Great GM's Discord server. Cookies and great advice from our closest of allies. It rhymes. It must be true. Well, there we go. It must be true.
Tilla says, but plate tectonics. Yeah, I've completely ignored plate tectonics in this for the time being. It might come into play, but generally...
I love plate tectonics. When people say, oh, but plate tectonics dictate that the mountains wouldn't be there, they'd be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way that mountains are formed. There's another way that mountains are formed, which makes much more interesting mountains. Do you know what it is?
Yes.
On Tuesdays.
Well, there's many ways.
There's many ways, yes.
What way are you talking about?
Well, Vertixico has got one. Volcanoes. Volcanoes make mountains. Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They don't require plate tectonics for that, although technically they are a byproduct of plate tectonics. But yes, there's volcanoes. There's another one that makes very interesting mountains based on older geography. The world serpent, no. Well, yes, okay. The world serpent in this world makes mountain ranges. Yes, absolutely. There's a very famous set of mountains in an area called the Greater Karoo and the Little Karoo as well. Vertixico is on a roll there. It's 1,000 experience points for you. Meteor strikes absolutely create some very dramatic mountain ranges. Yes, correct.
Yep, that's true.
They create some wonderful ones. The largest meteor strike, or one of the largest meteor strikes, happens to be visible only from Google Maps. It's so big. If you're really curious, go and have a look in South Africa. I know I keep going back to South Africa, but I know quite a bit about South African geography.
I mean, you are from South Africa, so
yes.
it makes sense, you know.
Exactly. Go and have a look for a little town called Parys, although you'd probably call it Paris, but it's pronounced Parys by the Dutch, the Afrikaans. And the mountain range that was created by this meteor impact stretches from Parys all the way to the mountain range called the Magaliesberg. Magaliesberg, and it's this massive ring, and we didn't know that it was there for a very, very long time. There was lots of subtle clues that there had been this meteorite impact until we got satellite photography, because then you can see there's this 60 kilometer, well, it's actually more than 60 kilometer radius impact crater.
That's pretty cool.
You can still see the ring, yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And so then finally Vertixico got there. I don't think anyone else got there. Glaciers make mountain ranges. They simply just pick up the rock and leave it. Mm-hmm. And I was mentioning the Greater Karoo and the Little Karoo. It's an area, it's a desert technically in South Africa. And we know, for example, that there were massive glaciers all over South Africa because there are drop boulders in the middle of the Karoo Desert.
Right.
And drop boulders I think they're fascinating. It's basically, here's a large 6-7 ton round rock. And you go, okay, well, that's very impressive. And then it has fossilized ripples around it. So rock ripples around it. And you go, how do you get rock ripples around a boulder? How do boulders make ripples? Well, they make ripples when they fall into mud. You know, if you drop something into mud, you get these ripples. And okay, but then how do they become rock? Well, that's fossilization, which we know happens on a fairly regular basis. And so that means that there has to have been something that dropped rocks into mud very long ago, and the only things that can do that are glaciers, because they pick up rocks, and then as they retreat, as they melt, all the things that are in them drop.
There's another effect of the glaciers as well, which causes the mountains themselves, which is the fact that because they're so heavy, the glaciers are so heavy, they actually push the ground back up when they recede. So not only are they dropping a lot of stuff and creating these mountains, but they're creating the earth bounces back up because it's kind of like a pressure thing, which increases the height of the mountains.
There you go.
Which I always thought was really, really cool.
So yeah, lovely. Chat. Lovely sort of journey into armchair geography. If any of you are particularly interested about this kind of stuff, there's a wonderful book. Oh, crikey. You know when you quote these things, you go, oh, I want to sound all smart and like I've read lots of books.
And you just like
and then you
forget
go
the book.
blank on the name of the author. I'll get there. Hang on a moment. I'm just using Google here.
What I'm doing at this point in time is I'm using these massive this large mountain range to do basically I'm thinking that if this is a jungly area, so down here we have South America or Argentina sort of area where it's much colder, much more temperate, even tundra-y, because we want tundra from our list. As we go higher, we get this jungle. This jungle on this side of these mountains needs to be super, super wet in order to create a nice jungle environment. So on the other side of them, you'll get a rain shadow. And this area is going to be much drier. So now I've changed the biome along this edge of this mountain range to match that. So you've got kind of an Amazon thing going on here, and over this side you've got a much drier area.
Well, you've got Chile. basically, which is exactly
Yeah,
what
basically.
happens. So the book is called Supercontinent. They did not sponsor today's show. Supercontinent by Ted Neal. I think that's how you pronounce Nield, Nield. Ted Nield. As it says, a truly exceptional book, hugely enjoyable. It is because he's written in a very accessible way, but the subtext is 10 billion years in the life of our planet. And what it does, it actually explains how tectonic movement happens and how we get to know about continents before. Because we all know about Pangaea and Gondwana land and the first sort of mega continent that the dinosaurs ran around in, and then they split it up and we get what we get today. But there was stuff beforehand, because basically the planet swings around, collides, forms a single continent, and then splits apart again, and then collapses together, and then swings around. And there's a way that we know about these things. So it's fascinating reading. If you are interested, there you go. £10 gets you the book and a little bit of knowledge after a couple hours of reading. Next question. John Mystery says the northeastern kingdom appears to be landlocked by this particular map. It does at the moment, but if we travelled 20 miles further to the north, we might find that there is actually a coastline there.
Yeah, so what I was imagining is we've done one of the areas now of major sort of importance to a map, which is the mountains. We haven't. I'm kind of thinking there's going to be a large jungle or rainforest in this area, but so we're kind of thinking about forests. The other thing we need to think about at this point is rivers. So if you have a rain shadow on this side and you have a much more lush area in this basin or wherever it is, you're going to have rivers running off of here. So to the northeast, you're going to find the rivers are going to go somewhere. So they're going to go. There's going to be an ocean somewhere off this way where these rivers run, unless we decide to create something kind of interesting, which I would kind of like, is to put the river going through here. What?
Because of the way that we're drawing this map, can't we have this river flowing to your circle and then turning into a waterfall and dropping into the Underdark?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
we can. We can link them that way. Absolutely. So the rivers are going to
river runs
flow.
Through. Yeah. It's this giant, like the Victoria Falls in Africa. It's just this wonderful, wonderful, massive
it's just
pouring
a hole.
In. Brilliant.
I like that. So I wasn't intending for those holes to be used for any purpose.
No, I know.
But yeah,
any hole in the storm.
Nice. Yeah. So you got a nice sort of, and then they'll just drop endlessly down. Great.
Some questions coming through. Jack Game asks, and this is quite an interesting question, or possibly not. What or where is the best place I can receive feedback on my maps? Is there a...
Yes, you can come ask me on the Discord. I have an artist channel on my Discord that you can link me your map and say, hey, Kiora, give me some feedback. And I'll be like, hey, that looks fantastic. Here's what it looks like to me. And do. So yes, I'd be more than willing to give you some feedback on your map if you head to the Discord. And just put it on the artist channel.
There you are. Joe D, I recognize £10 it's 5 kilos. It's not that heavy, but yes, you could probably buy it for about $12, I suppose, or £10 is what, 20,000 yen, or a million South African rand at the moment. So, yes, some questions about your general health, Kaora. The Dungeon Tomb says, is it not hard or difficult to draw with gloves on, or are you in a really cold room because they don't look like you're wearing drawing gloves?
This is an arthritis glove. I do not have arthritis. It does, however,
Looking
help
good for your
immeasurably
age.
with keeping my hand warm because I work in a shed. And it's winter here in England, and it is cold. So yes, I am kind of cold, but also it does help with the blood flow and generally gripping onto the pen. It has pads, these little dots that help just grip the pen. And I've just gotten used to it. It's very, very helpful. It just helps me do things. I have a little bit of low blood circulation, so it just helps.
Well, there you go. I used to have arthritic dice. Yeah, way back when these were made in about the 50s. I still have about 3 out of 6 left, I think. They're just big D6s that we used for people who had arthritis and they couldn't grab the small ones. Yeah. So there we are.
What do you think of these rivers, Guy?
Yeah. I mean, obviously your mountain is
thoughts.
a long way, but
oh yeah, we can get rid of that now.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine. Let's go back to our list of what people suggested, because maybe that will help us with our rivers.
So, volcano...
We haven't got yet.
We kind of can put that anywhere, because a volcano can pop up anywhere.
Okay, I do want floating islands around that volcano, though, but we'll get to
Sure.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Underdark, we're okay.
Yep.
Tundra
kind of down here.
Yep. Yeah, okay.
Deserts, we've kind of got a badlands instead.
Yeah.
Hot swamps with a winky face. Now, I'm kind of thinking on this this part here.
Oh, that could be quite good. Okay, then the swamp comes from somewhere.
Yes. So we've got to have so not all the rivers in this basin are gonna flow into the drain, as somebody put it on
the drain.
Twitch,
I like that.
The thing. The drain. So we're gonna have some rivers coming down here, and the swamp is gonna basically be a big bunch of just stuff like this. A lot of waterways. In fact, I really like that because not only do the mountains separate this culture, not only did the Badlands separate these two cultures, but now you have the swamp to get through. So these two cultures are slightly separate as well. So yes, that's good. That's nice. So we've got our hot swamps, our hot jungle swamps or mangroves and things on the edges here.
Well, relatively hot. We're only 5 miles away from tundra, but yes. Okay, 20 miles.
It's a small world.
After all.
Yeah, we're perhaps thinking a bit too big with this map, but it's fine.
It's okay, it's fantasy.
Lawrence
says, do you bother to account for the curvature of the planet in world maps?
No.
This has been bothering me for a while, as I have always neglected it in my maps. Wasn't Deos talking about curvature?
Deos is going to deal with curvature with its land masses, but not its assets, which is fair, but not in alpha. And generally speaking, I like to think of these kinds of things as just different approaches to map making. I personally never bother with it because I don't find it particularly useful. Some people do because they like that top-down approach, but I tend to stay away from it in the same vein that I stay away from other kind of more complicated subjects when it comes to map making, because you just get lost.
You can get, you spend 50 years making a map.
Yeah.
I think you've got enough rivers. I think that's brilliant.
Well, I was going to add on the other side of here another swamp, the Goblin Swamp. Because somebody wanted a Goblin Swamp.
They did want a Goblin Swamp. Oh, is that different from the Super Sexy Swamp? Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah,
big shout out. I see there that we've got Game Master's Vault in chat. Game Master's Vault, for those of you who don't know, he has some YouTube videos that he has done. Some very, very, very good videos, as well as one particularly nice one on tracking initiative in your games and prepping bits and pieces for your players to really impress them. He is also the editor of my book and a savage taskmaster too. He is so, but always making products better and better. So Ola to you as well.
Lara says a question: where does the water go after it goes into the Underdark?
Usually it goes to casinos, although we have run an intervention to try and stop that. Don't look at me like that! Don't shake your head in that tone of voice.
I would say that possibly what we could do is we could say that the water drains onto into a lake that's
Right.
very hot and bubbly.
Oh.
And it creates a lot of steam. And the steam comes back out of the hole and rains back down onto the jungle in a perpetual cycle of rainy, steamy goodness.
And the Underdark's quite damp because of
Yeah,
that.
and
So
all of
we
the
could have a fungus
Underdark is
forest there.
filled with because you don't get rain, so it's going to have to be damp in order to create some nice areas for
fungal forest.
fungus and other plant life and things like that. I think that kind of works.
I do. We'll go with that. John Mystery says the southernmost kingdom seems to have the easiest access to the water. Does that create an imbalance in the trade? Well, it might very well, except that it's controlled by that other kingdom. So yes, they have easy access, but they've got that other race that's there. So it's super cool. I love those stories that we start to create when we do this. Okay, so you've done your rivers, you've done your map, your mountains. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling in terms of stream length? Because we've been going for 2 hours now.
Yes, I don't know. I mean, we could leave it here. I think this is a good point to end it. The one thing I'll say before we end the stream is that the final big part of these maps is forests. Usually, I like to finish on a sketch with working out where forests are going to go, because they're usually the last big blocking out thing. You usually have a big area map where you have a forest. So give me some direction on where you would like some forests, Guy.
Well, obviously the jungle.
Yeah, so this entire thing is going to be
forest, I would say, something like that. Yes.
Or huge sort of there can be gaps, but generally speaking, yes, this is a. We're going to say that's a jungle or a rainforest.
Yeah, but we'll do this in the next stream though.
Oh, you want to do forest in the next stream?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, sure. We'll leave it.
I mean, but once you've done forest, mountains, and rivers, then it's really just geography, and then you get to play in the damn thing. I mean, that's
then
really...
it's settlements and dungeon entrances and
that's the fun part.
Interesting locations and things like that. But yes, you're right.
Well, if you want to do some trees, you can do some.
No. We'll do the trees next time. It's something for people to look forward to.
Yosu Ramirez says, "How do you represent sky islands in the map, particularly when there is something equally important underneath it? How do you go about this?" Well, I want to have a volcano with a floating island around it, at least. So we'll get to answering your question when we come back in our next stream. I think you folks seem to like the stream. You like to hang out with us. That's really awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed the commentary that's come through. And I've had fun. Kara, have you had fun?
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. I think we're building something here that's really fun, and if you guys come back for the next session and you really enjoy this, then give us your suggestions, because we're taking your stuff that you're giving us. We're taking these things and we're making these maps from a stream sort of community thing. So give us your ideas and we'll put it in there, because almost every single idea that people have thrown at us today, we've tried to incorporate. And there were some that that didn't get mentioned on here because they were sort of city based or whatever. But when we get to that level, we'll try and add it in. I think this has been great. This is really, really cool. And it looks great. I think that's a really nice looking map,
Yeah,
I the shape of it, and
it's interesting. I'm just excited for when we start getting to the politics of it, because that's where it gets. So lots of people certainly seem to have had fun on this stream, and some people listening to it in the background whilst at work. Absolutely, that's what we were thinking. Just sort of being in the background, just chatting, and we've received over 1,000 messages through the Restream chat. So that's what you guys have done in 2 hours and a bit. Over 1,000 messages backwards and forwards. That's super cool.
Fantastic.
And yes, we'll carry on next week. And next week we're starting to get to, I don't want to say the exciting part, because all of it's exciting, but
yes, but the nitty gritty details.
Yeah, and how do we draw an iron desert, and how do we draw floating islands and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
We'll delve into that. And what are the implications? Because they're huge implications when you start having floating islands, which for me was the weakest part of Avatar. They explained it, but
not very well.
Not very well, and there was a lot of the biggest problem was that they didn't exploit it. And you go,
the other thing I will say that we're going to figure out next week probably is the races.
Oh yes, oh yes. No, I really do look forward to that.
yes.
We've got lots of suggestions. We've got goblins. We've got lizard folk. We've got yes. So lots of that. So to answer your question, when will the stream be on yet again? Actually, let's go back to this one because the map's beautiful, but this way. Shift.
Oh,
Shift.
we have
Sorry.
to- oh, no.
Wait, I'm going back.
Oh.
Wait. Okay. Thing.
Ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, go.
Yay! Almost seamless.
Yeah.
Almost seamless. Good. Okay, so there we are. Right, so there's lots of things about floating islands and things, and you're absolutely right. Yes, putting sails on them and floating those islands around. It's a wonderful idea.
Maybe ships then.
Well, they become ships, but there's some interesting things when you start having mobile geography, and it has to do with what happens.
Mapmaker's worst nightmare. I think I'd label that as.
What happens when you land? Does it become does it supersede the kingdom that it has now crushed? Anyway, that's for another one. We will let's talk about what's going to be coming up this week. So tomorrow night is my stream, live sessions with a GM, that you can find on my Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/greatgm, or on this YouTube channel. Find it here most of the time. That's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Are you streaming tomorrow night? You also have a stream?
Yes, I will be on the World Anvil channel
right.
tomorrow because I'm going to be talking to Janet about maps because World Anvil currently has a map competition running for regions. So if you love this stream and you want to draw some regions during this month and enter this competition, then this is a great stream because you'll get some great ideas. And if you want to ask me any questions directly about map making tips, where to put these things, how do I do this, how do I draw that, ask me tomorrow on the World Anvil stream because I'll be taking a lot more questions on there.
There we go.
So that's on the World Anvil channel tomorrow at 7 or 8. I don't know
8,
what time.
8 p.m. So after
8
my
p.m.
show. I usually link from my show
Yes.
straight into the World Anvil show. So there we are. So there is definitely that. And then during the week are my GM tutorial videos that will be coming out. We're doing Campaign Creator. We're looking at something very different, very new. Have you got some streams during the week as well?
Yes, I stream on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Yeah, I'll be doing a bunch of map making of some kind, asset-based stuff, things I'm working on for my patrons, basically.
There we go. And then we will be back with Hello World. I think that's how you have to say it, isn't it? You sort of have
Hello, world.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, well.
Hello, world. Yeah.
There we go. So we'll be back next week with Hello World. Next week, same time, 7 p.m. GMT. That's sort of 3 o'clock on a Tuesday if you're in America, or it's 5 p.m. on a, well, who cares? And if you're in Australia. I love the Australian. The Australian accent gets me every
Hi,
time.
Michael. It's the only Australian I know.
Well, he knows all of the other Australians, so it's fine.
That's
they all
fine.
know each
Yeah,
other.
it's a
You know
big
how it
club.
works.
It's a big club.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, until next time, we will see you all from me. Goodbye, and
For me, goodbye too. Goodbye.
so yes, goodbye, world. Well, that was a lot of fun. We're still streaming and they can still hear us, so just bear that in mind.
Really?
Yeah,
okay,
because I
great.
don't have music here. I didn't have enough time.
You
this
need
was
to
so rushed.
do an outro.
I know. So just hum a little bit again. If you're listening to this right now, just hum a little bit for yourself and think that that's the music that's
Wait,
playing.
I've got I thought of a song I could hum. I can hum some Zelda music. Ready?
Is that Zelda music? I've never played. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to stop the stream now.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Probably a good idea.
Raid. Who do we raid? I can't raid.
I can't raid either.
I can't raid because I actually don't have any control over that thingy. So, yeah.
Go see people that are doing D&D streams and say hello for us.
And you can find us on the Great GM channel on YouTube and on Kaira's Twitch show channel later. Thanks. Okay, bye now.
Okay, bye.
Bye. But really, bye. You know the Japanese say bye as well. They don't say sayonara.
Really?
Yeah, they say bye.
Let's say some Japanese words.
No, they say bye. Anyway, bye.